Emmerdale villain Ray Walters has met a grisly end after inflicting months of terror on several villagers. Many of them are looking shifty in the wake of his murder, from victims April Windsor and Dylan Penders, to Ray's horrified ex Laurel Thomas, and the enslaved Beowulf's son Paddy Dingle. And as we take a deep dive into who could be behind Ray's demise, we can't overlook the fact that soap whodunits often expose a wild-card killer. Next week's episodes see April remind Dylan that they were both manipulated by Ray. So is she trying to ease her conscience? What if, after Ray ordered her to flee, April attempted to go home and Ray found her, forcing her to lash out to protect herself? Or could April have discovered that she didn't kill predatory Callum in self-defense before the police told her officially? This could have caused April to confront Ray over his lies, meaning that when she voiced fresh fears of arrest, April was secretly talking about Ray. Next week, Dylan declares that Ray didn't deserve to die, so one might think that Dylan must be innocent. However, the tortured teen felt terrible that he was taken in by Ray and got April involved in selling drugs. So, what if Dylan confronted Ray about his vile actions, and their row got out of hand? Could Dylan have accidentally taken Ray's life, and now he's so racked with guilt that he's jumping to Ray's defense? This week, we saw Paddy informed that Ray and Celia trapped his vulnerable dad Bear in a sickening cycle of slave labor. And with Bear's death at Celia's hands looking to be confirmed, Paddy is set for more heartbreak. But with so much still unseen in this saga, might Paddy have found out earlier, off-screen, and tracked Ray down? Having uncovered Ray's crimes, Laurel was seen wiping down a pair of scissors while shaking, and we'll see her looking increasingly troubled as this saga continues. But when she insists to police next week that Jai Sharma couldn't have killed Ray, is Laurel's certainty based on faith, or the knowledge that she is the culprit? Next week, amid a heated exchange with Laurel over her disastrous relationship with Ray, Arthur is stunned by news of his body being found. But could Arthur have taken violent action after finding out about Ray's deceit? There's every chance Laurel's intense reaction was down to protecting her son. It's been a quiet few years for Arthur, and making him the killer would be a genuine shocker. Ross and April have a mysterious pact, so we can't help wondering if he stepped in during an altercation with Ray, who he had previous dealings with. But Ross has been preoccupied with suspicions over Charity Dingle, who is secretly pregnant with his child. If Ross is guilty of murder, would he really be able to focus on the baby drama? Ray's body was abandoned in a haulage van driven by Jai. But was Jai really oblivious? Jai's under pressure when the corpse is found, and after Caleb lets slip about Jai's divorce from Laurel, Jai is taken in for questioning. Upon his release, Jai loses his temper defending himself and accuses April and Dylan. Is Jai deflecting, or has he been wrongly targeted? Jai acknowledged Laurel's distress in a post-Currydale scene, which could hint that he knew about Ray. So, even if the van connection seems too obvious, we can't bring ourselves to rule Jai out just yet. Marlon's last known interaction with Ray saw the Woolpack chef threatened once more. Later, Marlon sent cryptic messages to a mystery person, and has since claimed that Ray definitely won't be coming back at that time. Ray's fate had not yet been revealed to the village, so how could Marlon possibly know that, unless he ensured Ray was gone for good? In a furtive phone call, Rona asked an unknown person if they had done something previously agreed upon. We have some thoughts on who that contact might be, so make sure you read on. For now, though, let's talk about what Rona herself is capable of. It wouldn't be the first time she's gone into battle for stepdaughter April. So while Rona was scared into submission by Ray, could she have caught him by surprise and overpowered him? Poor Bob found himself with yet another failed romance when he heard Celia was not the sweet, charming woman he had dinner with, but the evil orchestrator of April's turmoil. But as he's seen gathering with other suspects next week, was Bob really so clueless about Ray? Then again, there are plenty of other characters left out of the running, who we simply must take a look at. Another victim of sexual exploitation, Dawn relived her past trauma in direct parallel with April, who was set up with a predatory man against her. Let's not forget that Dawn has killed before, when she had no other choice. Did she stumble upon Ray's operation and hit out? Dawn hasn't been seen much lately, which could have been a deliberate decision from Emmerdale. Yes, we know he was apparently already murdered before Ray, but we never saw Ray check Bear's body up close. Although Bear bonded with Ray as the latter grew a conscience, could Bear have suddenly woken from Celia's onslaught and fought back, with Ray taking the brunt, ahead of their comeuppance? We predicted that Celia could murder Ray to stop him from finally standing up to her. Now, with Ray having fatally stabbed Celia first, that theory has been disproved. Or has it? Given Graham Forster has just made a shock return despite suffering one of the most brutal murders in soap history, it doesn't seem so implausible that Celia may have survived that knife in her back. At least, for long enough to turn the tables on Ray and order one of her brainwashed slaves to remove his body. And speaking of Graham, was Graham in cahoots with ex-girlfriend Rona about taking Ray down? We've yet to know what Graham's been up to over the years, but he was keeping a terrified Jody tied up in the back of a van, that if he was associating with Ray in any way. One word from Rona about how far he went with April may have been enough to make Graham turn the tables on Ray. Perhaps in the aftermath, despite how it looked, Graham was actually trying to take Jody to safety. Was Graham in cahoots with ex-girlfriend Rona about taking Ray down? We've yet to know what Graham's been up to over the years, but he was keeping a terrified Jody tied up in the back of a van, that if he was associating with Ray in any way. One word from Rona about how far he went with April may have been enough to make Graham turn the tables on Ray. Perhaps in the aftermath, despite how it looked, Graham was actually trying to take Jody to safety. Emmerdale was never a quiet village, but the silence that followed Ray Walters' death felt unnatural. It hung over the streets like a heavy fog, thick with unspoken questions and guilty glances. Ray had been a terror for months, his manipulations leaving scars on April Windsor, Dylan Penders, and countless others. His predatory nature had made him a constant shadow, a looming presence that twisted every interaction he touched. And now, that shadow was gone. April Windsor sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. Her fingers clutched a notebook filled with scribbled reminders, dates, and confessions she wasn't ready to show anyone. The memory of Ray's smirk, the way he had cornered her with his threats and orders, still made her stomach churn. "Did I?" she whispered into the empty room, voice barely audible. The thought gnawed at her. Had she been involved in his death, even indirectly? April's conscience was a battlefield, torn between relief at his absence and fear at the possibility that she might be implicated. Downstairs, Dylan Penders paced. He had always been more impulsive than April, more reactive to threats, yet calmer in the aftermath. The thought of Ray's demise filled him with conflicting emotions. On one hand, a sick sense of justice had been served. On the other, the guilt of what might have happened during their confrontations gnawed at him. If anyone asked him, Dylan would insist Ray didn't deserve to die. And yet, when he closed his eyes, he could see the confrontation, the anger, the moments when he had lashed out, or tried to, and wondered if it had gone too far. Chapter 2. Secrets in the Shadows. Laurel Thomas's house was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the old clock in the hallway. She wiped down a pair of scissors repeatedly, her hands shaking, as though the motion could scrub away the memory of that night. Ray Walters had been more than just a villain to Laurel. He had been the destructive force in her life, the man who had endangered her and those she loved. She remembered the confrontation vividly, words screamed, emotions running wild. But now, with Ray's body discovered, Laurel's mind raced. How much did the police know? How much could they prove? And more importantly, who could she trust? Meanwhile, Paddy Dingle sat alone on the edge of the woods, thinking about his father, Bear Wolf. The cycle of torment that Ray and Celia had subjected Bear to left Paddy reeling with anger and grief. Could he have been involved in the confrontation? The thought made him shiver, but he knew one thing. If Ray had hurt anyone else, Paddy's father's death would pale in comparison. Chapter 3. The village reacts. The Woolpack was abuzz with speculation. Marlon had sent cryptic messages to a mystery contact, hinting that Ray would never be coming back. No one knew who Marlon was addressing, but the whispers were enough to make every villager second-guess their own interactions with the late villain. Bob, still reeling from the revelation of Celia's true nature, couldn't comprehend how the sweet, charming woman he had met could be part of this nightmare. Dawn, haunted by her own traumatic past, watched from the sidelines, her mind racing with possibilities. Could she too have played a part, even indirectly? Jai Sharma's involvement, or perceived involvement, added another layer of intrigue. His van had carried Ray's body, but the young man's anger and defense suggested either guilt or deflection. And then there was Rona, making furtive phone calls that hinted at prior knowledge and secret alliances. Chapter 4. Confrontations and Confessions. April found herself compelled to speak to Dylan. "We were both manipulated," she said quietly, her eyes searching his for understanding. "He made us do things we shouldn't have." Dylan nodded, the weight of their shared trauma pressing down. He wanted to say Ray didn't deserve what happened, but the thought of the confrontations, the moments when anger flared, kept him silent. He had been drawn into Ray's world, coerced into acts he hated himself for. Elsewhere, Laurel faced the police, insisting Jai Sharma couldn't have killed Ray. But her voice trembled with more than just fear. It carried the weight of someone hiding truths that could destroy lives if revealed. Was she protecting someone? Or protecting herself? Chapter 5. The wildcard soap whodunits thrived on wildcards, the unexpected players who upend every theory. Arthur, typically quiet, had learned of Ray's deceit and betrayal, leaving the door open for a shocking act of violence. Ross, preoccupied with Charity's secret pregnancy, might have found himself entangled in Ray's final moments. And then there were unseen players, like Graham Foster, whose return after near-death suggested hidden agendas and possible involvement. Every interaction, every overheard whisper, every cryptic message could point to the killer. The village was a web of secrets, lies, and shifting loyalties, and no one could be entirely trusted. Chapter 6. The aftermath. Ray Walters' death rippled through Emmerdale. Villagers looked over their shoulders, unsure who knew what. April and Dylan struggled with guilt and relief. Laurel fought to maintain her composure, and Paddy grappled with the knowledge of his father's suffering. In the shadows, alliances formed and shattered, motives tangled in impossible ways, and the ultimate truth of Ray's demise remained elusive. The village, forever changed, braced for the fallout, and the revelation of the one person who had ended Ray Walters' reign of terror.